And we're backstage with our headliner for the Iowa City Jazz Festival on this July 4th, Charles Lloyd. Welcome to Iowa, Charles.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Have you been to Iowa before?
Uh, yes, but I don't remember. You know, I do know that I got off the plane yesterday,
Yeah.
and it was the most beautiful day.
Yeah, it
I
was.
liked that it was bright and wonderful, and there was no humidity that I could detect, and it felt like a paradise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You caught a good weekend.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Normally it's a
Yeah.
little toastier, a little
Yeah.
more humid.
I
but
was very blessed, and
yeah.
I've got a jacket on in case the weather changes.
Yeah, it might get a
and
little chilly later on
I
tonight.
could always take it off, of course. Yeah.
Speaking of beautiful places, the story that you kind of left the world for a while back in the early 70s, headed off to Big Sur, which has been inspiration for all kinds of artists. Jack Kerouac, I think most recently Bill Frisell did a couple weeks out in Big Sur, and with his inspiration wrote some music on that. Explain what it is about Big Sur that took you away for almost a decade, and that area out there.
I
and
can't explain it.
What was it that moved
I didn't
you?
know how long I'd stay.
Oh, yeah, kind of lost track of time.
Well, no, I was in the now, but the problem is that when you decide to go and work on your interior life, um, it's sort of like you sweep a room and dust flies, and you just keep sweeping and don't look at the dust. And then I noticed that weeks, months, and years were ticking off, and I was becoming more comfortable with inner life than I was in the outward stroke of life. So it's sort of like it's an analogy I think I made in Dorothy's film, Arrows to Infinity, the documentary that was shown on me yesterday. It's that if you're always in motion, you don't get the chance to charge the battery up, So I went there to recharge my battery. So I pulled the arrow back so that it could fly farther, But
That's
I
a great
didn't know that
analogy.
I would come back in a public way, but it certainly happened.
Yeah,
And
it was, I think, like 1981 that
Petrucciani showed up.
18-year-old Michelle Petrucciani showed up and kind of
Yeah.
kind of snapped you out of things. How did
Well, the elders had always been kind to me and helped me. And, he came at a special time, and I wasn't looking for that or expecting it.
Hmm.
So it's sort of, they say that if you have the qualities and you live away in a cave, somehow they'll find you. So this guy found me. And I took him around the world a couple of years to get him started. And I was happy to do that because, as I said, the elders had always helped me.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. He was a
He was
phenomenal
very
pianist.
special,
He
yeah.
certainly was. You came close to exiting the scene back in 2001 again. You were going to take another little hiatus, and your good friend Billy Higgins kind of talked you out of it. About the same year that we lost Billy Higgins. Talk a little bit about your relationship with Billy Higgins and what a friend he was, and how he persuaded you to stick with this side of things in the world.
Well, I've known him since I was 18, and he was 19 when I first went to the University of Southern California. He was living in Los Angeles, and I met him at a jam session, and we grew a very close bond, and that was a very special time in California, late 50s, and he was a person who always, everyone who played with him, no matter how you played, ahead of the beat, behind the beat, on the beat, he had this ability to make you a tailor-made suit. He'd make whatever you were doing sound wonderful, and I just always appreciated him. And he was a very spiritual man, and he sort of got into the fast track lane of life, and it took him a long time to get off of that, and Tragic Magic took him for a long time.
Hmm.
And he's someone that's always been close to me, but he went to New York in 1959 with Ornette and his group, and they played the 5 spot for a year, about a year. That would never happen now. But that was just a little club down in the Bowery, and he he had some difficulty with his cabaret card, and he was off the scene for a while. But then he began to play with Monk, and he recorded with everyone over at Blue Note and like that. But the interesting thing is that I went to New York in 1960. I had replaced Eric Dolphy with Chico Hamilton. Eric had joined Charles Mingus's band, and so when that happened, uh, Buddy Collette, who was a mentor to Eric Dolphy and myself, he was in the studio system at the time, and Chico asked him for help, but he said that he was, at the time he was playing in the studio band behind Groucho Marx show and all that.
Oh.
So he had a lot of quality work
Mm-hmm.
and recording sessions and such. And so he said, I can't come, but I know a guy. So he sent me, and so I got to New York in 1960. And my best friend from high school, Booker Little, happened to be playing the night I got to New York at Birdland. And I went down. I was staying at the little musicians' hotel across the street from Birdland called the Alvin Hotel, which is where Perez, Lester Young, had died.
Mm.
And so I said, Booker, I'm here. He said, where are you staying? I said, mind you, he's my high school best friend. He said, where are you staying? I said, the Alvin. He said, no, you're not. Pack your bags. You're coming home with me. So he took me home up to his apartment up on East 92nd Street. And I stayed there for several months with him. And he was a great mentor and teacher to me because we had been great friends, but he knew the ropes. He knew the way. And he knew enough to tell me that to beware of the fast lane and it was about character. And that haunted me. And then Booker left a few months later. He passed away at 23 in 1961. And he was a realized soul. And at the time he died, he was writing a suite for Coleman Hawkins, an 8-piece orchestral work. And I don't know if anyone ever came upon that work. Anyway, I went out on the road again with Chico, and so when I left his place and I came back, he had passed away. And but anyway, getting back to Higgins. Higgins made himself scarce in New York, and he wouldn't let me hang out or be around him because he had gone very much sort of like underground.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing, but somewhere in the 70s, he cleaned himself up and he went back to Cali and started a school in Los Angeles called the World Stage. And he was a mentor to a lot of young people. And all the musicians always loved him. And he and I began our relationship when I came back to Cali. And we made a record somewhere in the 90s, somewhere called Acoustic Masters with Cedar Walton, Buster Williams, and Billy. And after that, we played a lot together. And I was still living, I don't know if I was still in Big Sur, Santa Barbara by now. I may have gone to Santa Barbara by then. But anyway, to answer your question, pardon me for being so long-winded here. When he came up to visit me in 2001, he brought all of his instruments. He filled up my living room, which is as big as these two tents together.
Yeah.
And he filled it up with all kinds of drums and guitars and instruments from all sorts of Arabia and places. And then we commenced to just play for a week, and it was a very beautiful experience. But during that time, I had been fasting for a couple of weeks when he came up. And I told him that I thought I was going to go back into the forest and leave the music. I told him I didn't think anyone really cared about this music. You know, it's always, in its homeland, not had the greatest of respect. We travel around the world and they lay out the carpet for us, but sometimes at home it's been difficult. So I said, you know, I'm into deconstruction, so I'm thinking about going back into the forest. And he gave me such a strong rebuke that I got the message. And this is my service, and so I'm honored and grateful that I also had a near-death experience in '86, which also made me reassess my commitment to the music.
Hmm.
I've always loved the music, and so, but I began the work on interior life, and once you start that, it becomes kind of monastic. You know, you live in another kind of world of spirit, and then you can also make a better world in the music. So I was always entranced with changing the world, and I never did that, but I when I went away, I realized I could change myself, you know. So I worked on my character and like that. And so Billy said to me on his deathbed, "We have to keep working on this music." And did you see the film yesterday?
I was
Oh,
I was here. I
okay.
didn't get a
So in the
chance.
film, uh, I said to Billy, "You mean you're going to get off this bed and come back and play with me?" He was weighing about 90 pounds, and he was a few weeks from leaving.
Hmm.
And he said, "No, I didn't say I'd be there, but I'll always be with you." And so in my heart, and that was in May of 2001 that he left. But in June 9/11, what month is that? September,
September.
right? September 11th, I was in New York to play the Blue Note for a week, and we didn't open because that thing happened on, I think it was a Monday, 9/11 was. And I was staying only a few blocks from the World Trade Center. And that week I met Eric Harlan. And so when I heard him, I realized that Billy had sent him. You know, is there a problem every now and then something static or something comes through
Sorry.
that's going to be sound like feedback or something? No, am I
It,
talking too loud
no,
or
you're doing
no?
fine. You were doing
Okay.
fine.
Anyway, so I Billy still lives in my heart. Yeah.
Another special place that actually, I'm assuming, inspired your latest project, Wild Man Dance, was, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's Wrocław, Poland, which you described as another very beautiful place that inspired
Yeah,
you.
it has a lot of nature and rivers and around there, sort of like what you have, beautiful and green, you know. And the festival there, they I played a concert there in 2010 with my quartet with Jason Moran, Eric Harlan, and Reuben Rogers, and they said it was the greatest concert they had had in their 10 years of their festival, and they wanted to commission me to do a special suite for them, and they offered me their string orchestra and choruses, all kinds of things. And I went away and thought about it, and I said, fine. And but I was hearing strings of a different sort. I wanted to put together modernity with the wisdom of the ancients. So I brought in an ancient lyra player from Greece that I know through a great singer master in Greece, Maria Farenturi, whom I've also recorded with. And I brought in a cymbalom player from Hungary, Budapest, named the lyra player was Socrates Sinopoulos, and the the cymbalom player is Mickey Lukas. And so I had always loved Bela Bartok's music in high school and
Hmm.
in college, and Booker and I used to study his scores. So I was trying to put together something that would put the wisdom of the ancients with modernity together. So those were my strings, and I had the string bass and the piano strings and like that. So it was just six pieces, but it was an orchestra and the traditional jazz quartet with bass and drums. And so we were very blessed to have this suite. Uh, it took me a long time to gestate and to write it, but once I started, I couldn't stop, and so like that. And it's my new recording, which is called Wild Man Dance, and it's in tribute to all the wild yogis that I play with, like Howlin' Wolf and Billy Higgins and Phineas Newborn and you know Ornette, all these musicians, many that I play with all my life. Bobby Hutcherson. So I play with so many great musicians all my life. I played in Cannonball's band with Joe Zawinul. That was a wonderful experience. And then my own groups with Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette and like
Hmm.
that. So I've always had these, and Gabor Szabo, the Hungarian guitarist. So I always had these wonderful associations. So I wanted to bring some of this together. It's what that music is about. And it's also about the nature of that beautiful place, Wroclaw,
Mhm.
where the festival is located.
Um, well, talk a little bit about who's going to be playing with you this evening, and is it going to be mostly things from Wild Man Dance then? And kind of give us a preview of what we're
No,
in for.
I'll mix it up. I don't know yet what I'm going to play. We have a vast repertoire of music now, and this is the first time in your city that I played. So I think I learned from Cannonball a long time ago. You go up on the stage and you find your you find your simpatico with your audience, and somehow the spirit moves me to what I'm going to play. So I don't set up a strict program. But it'll be a potpourri of my life and my music, you know. So it's like that. But and playing with me is Gerald Clayton is playing the piano now. Jason Moran's been playing with me now for several years.
Hmm.
But now he has duties of running the Kennedy Center Jazz Program. He's teaching it at the school in New England, and from time, and he has his own group. So we have scheduling conflicts. But what happens is that I met this young man, several years ago, who also wanted to play with me, Gerald Clayton, and he's a poet at the piano, and so I welcome him. And then my bassist, Reuben Rogers, introduced me to a wonderful young bassist who's very talented, Joe Sanders,
Hmm.
who also is close with Gerald, so they have a deep simpatico. And the drummer, Kendrick Scott, grew up with Eric Harlan in Houston, Texas, so he's close to Eric. And Eric had commitments that he couldn't get out of, and so we all try to get together when we can. And it's kind of a my my how to say my artist friends that I play with. It expands and sometimes contracts and like that. But I always have great musicians that I like to listen to and share with. So I never plan to bore myself, and I definitely wouldn't do that for an audience.
Of course not. Well, I thank you so much for taking a few minutes out. I know you've got to get ready to go and get on stage, but fantastic to have you here. Welcome to Iowa, and
Thank
hope
you
you come back
kindly.
again sometime.
I think it's a
And
beautiful thing you're doing here, this festival. And Don Thompson told me just yesterday he's that you guys have been doing this festival for 25 years. And I said, why'd you never bring me? He said, well, we never could afford you. So I don't do business, but he was candid, and but he seemed to be happy that I'm here, and I'm very happy that I'm here. And there was a wonderful turnout for Arrows into Infinity, Dorothy Darr's film on my life and music, yesterday at the library, and we had a Q&A afterwards, and that was very interesting. So I'm honored to be here, and I look forward to playing.
thank you, sir.
Thank you kindly.